back to another Brooklyn Pony video. This video is part 36 in the series. For those of you that have been here all along, you already know the story on this Mustang that's on the lift behind me. For those of you that are just now showing up and maybe seeing these videos for the first time, I suggest you go back and take a look at the build of this 66 convertible, from starting with basically nothing and working my way up. Those videos cover a lot of ground, and this video is going to cover the rear valance. Now, I actually thought that I had already done a video on the rear valance whenever I did the tail panel and the quarters and all that fitment. I thought I'd already done that, but apparently I didn't. And that's a good thing in a way, because the owner, initially we looked at doing just a standard rear valance panel. You know, just no cutouts for exhaust, just tail light or backup lights. And this is the panel that I bought. And this panel actually has a Dynacorn sticker on it. Now, plans changed, and that's okay, because now I'm going to install this panel with the exhaust cutouts, and this panel is from CJ Pony Parts. And it actually has, and I'll show you the labels here in a minute, but this one says Classic on it, or Classics, and it has the CJ logo. So I don't know if they just put that logo on there. I'm assuming they do. I don't know if they have this made for them or not, but I want to go over some details with these different valance panels. And there's going to be some fitment issues. I already know that. So I'm going to have to massage the panels as I normally do. And I also have, for a comparison, a third panel. And this panel was given to me by my friend Glenn. If you remember, I did a video, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, where he and his son built a 66 Mustang coupe that was red, a father-son project. I did a video on it, and Glenn ended up giving me a bunch of extra pieces and parts that he didn't need. So this panel, it has the dreaded Made in Taiwan sticker right there. So this is the basic panel that you can get. And I'm going to go over some things with these three panels so you have some idea of what you're looking forward to if you decide to use any of these. And I'll do some comparisons and hopefully give you some information that you'll find useful. So let's get started and have a look at how these panels actually fit the car. Now, I do want to point out that this tail panel, this is one of the original Ford tooling panels. And I recommend that if you're going to replace a tail panel, this is the only panel you go with. Original tooling. The other ones that are out there, garbage. Trust me, I've done videos on this. If you go back and look at Mystique, I did a video specific to this installation of, or a comparison of, an aftermarket generic panel and this original tooling. So make note of that. Now, the rest of this stuff is all Dynacorn. You know, this is a one-piece floor pan all the way back to the trunk area. So all this here, you can just see there's still some silver showing. That's all weld-through primer. So all of this is Dynacorn. Came pre-assembled. You know, the floor pan and the trunk pan, all that sort of thing on the frame rails. So this is what I have to go with. The quarters they came in a box that said Dynacorn. So, but they're black. And I'll point out that when I was at SEMA, I actually talked to a representative of Dynacorn and I asked him some questions. And some of those questions were a little pointed, as in, why do we have to rework the panels so much to make them fit? He commented that, well, that's the way they are, kind of. That's kind of the gist of it. So I wasn't real happy with his answers. One of the big things I talked about was the hood not being the right length or not fitting the extensions properly. And he said, well, what extensions were you using? And I said, well, I was using OE. I experimented with OE and aftermarket. Anyway, so I didn't like his answers, but I'm not going to get into that anymore. I'm just going to tell you that this panel said Dynacorn on the box, but it's a black panel, which typically means it's your basic panel, same as everything else. What I do like about these panels though is the transitions. If you look at the panels that are on the car, you've got a recess area right here where the tail pan or the valance panel comes up, and you also will have a transition down here at the bottom. So just know that, and look for those whenever you're looking at parts. Now, what I want to do here is attach each one of these panels by the screw holes that are pre-existing in this piece right here, because they came stamped in this panel. And I will say that these are not drilled. These holes are basically done with a punch. So what that means is you end up with a lot of material on the back side as it kind of makes like a flower shape or whatever, and blooms out. So what I did is I took a cutoff wheel, just a little ziz wheel as I call it, and let me grab one. Call that a ziz wheel, little fibrous wheel that cuts real nice. So what I did is I came up behind these punch throughs and cut off a lot of that excess metal. There's still a little bit there, which is fine, but I got rid of that because when you try to run screws into these holes, you're going to fight with it. I've had a variety of screw brands that I've used. I've used this stuff you buy directly from CJ or Mustangs Unlimited. I've actually, in some cases, I think I've sheared off some screws just because they bind so quickly, and you're running them in with like a cordless drill, boom, snaps right off. So what I've done, after I did the cutoff, I took an 1/8 inch drill bit and I drilled through each one of these holes to make sure they're clean. And then in this case, I like using these because they got a big flat head on them. These are self-piercing type of screws. I think I got these at Lowe's or something. You don't have to use these, but these are, I like them because they got a broad head on them. So when you put them up there, it covers some ground. You know, it's flat. And I've already run these through these holes to make sure they're nice and clean. And so that's what I'm going to use, is these little screws. Now, again, I want to do some comparison here. These panels probably all have their pros and cons, and I'm going to start with the generic Taiwan panel. And let me just show you a couple things since I'm standing right here with it. This panel, again, has the Taiwan sticker. There's no other branding on this. There's nothing else that says, you know, who's it for or who made it. Nothing. Just has the Taiwan sticker. So this is probably the cheapest panel you can get, and it kind of feels that way. It's a little flimsy, you know, a little more. The metal is thinner, let's say, than probably the other two. I will point out that you can see in the light, there's the spot welds. Sorry, I'm looking at this backwards. Spot welds from where the little tab is attached, you know, and then the stamping or the attachment for the license plate piece. Alright, so let's just make this simple. This is the CJ with the cutouts. This is the generic flimsy R-dot panel. This panel is Dynacorn. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you a couple comparisons here. Remember I talked about the little spot welds? Well, that's the same thing you see on this Dynacorn panel. If you look at the CJ panel, there's no spot weld seen, but there's a little raised spot right there, and you can just see a little high point. So this one has less obvious you know, marks or whatever. Then you look at the corners. This corner, it's very rounded off, let's say, and it looks pretty clean the way it ends. On this panel, which is the Taiwan, very pointed, sharp corner. Come back over here to the Dynacorn, and it's more rounded like the CJ panel. So that's some comparison that you can look at. From another standpoint, you've got the bracket here on the CJ panel. This is flat. There is no raised portion. But I will point out, and this is just because I notice these things, if you look, the gap on that side from the top of the flange to that first crease, it's different. And it's, I don't know how much it is, I could measure it, but this piece is just a little bit crooked. May not be much of a concern because once you put a license plate on there, you can tilt it a little bit if you need to. I don't know if I'm going to take that loose or not when I get to that point, but I'm just pointing this out. This is the Taiwan panel, and again, it's, you know, got the wavy segment there, but it appears to be straight. And then Dynacorn panel, nice and clean fitment, and appears to be straight as well. Otherwise, you know, they're basically, you know, somewhat interchangeable. Depends on what you're looking for a panel. I will point out also that the lines maybe a little bit crisper on the CJ panel. The edges are cleaner. They feel nice. What was the other thing I was looking at? Oh, we're gonna talk about angles too in a minute, but Dynacorn panel, pretty decent as far as that goes. And then you have your, let's say, curve here. So each one is slightly different, and I'm going to go over some of that whenever I put them on the car. So now I can at least just drive on and show you what I want to show you with the installation. All right, so the first panel is going to be the R. generic. All right, well, to start off with, okay, I could use that hole, sort of that hole, probably that hole, no, unlikely, no, and of course there are no holes here because I did not have those pre-drilled. As far as fitment, well, I don't know if you can see the gap there. That's pretty painful. But let's go look at the other side. And again, no hole there because it doesn't come pre-drilled. And wee bit short. Not surprising. Okay, so let's take that panel off and look at the next one. Okay, Dynacorn. Now, just as a reminder, you know, this is a Dynacorn panel that's attached to basically a Dynacorn body. So that hole could probably be used. Not so much. No. Maybe. Unlikely. And if you look, this whole panel probably needs a shift to the right or to the left a little bit, but it's fighting this bracket already. The transition here, no, not good. And over here, yep, short, and very similar to the generic panel. So, one of these may become a sacrifice to if I have to modify the CJ panel, but let's have a look at it. Again, this is the classic panel that says CJ on it. I will point out the part number is YW6218A _CJ. So maybe it is made just for them by YW whatever. It does say made in Taiwan. It does say RDOT on it as well, but heavier panel. So let's see what happens with this one. Well, on the plus side, the holes are closer. A lot closer on the driver's side, let's say. And even over here, these are relatively close. That one probably catch the edge of it. This one I can't really see where it's at. And I think part of that is that it's really fighting that section right there. Now I've read or seen other people's comments that these brackets really get in the way when trying to assemble this. So I have a feeling I'm gonna have to take those brackets off, make the panel fit, and then make the brackets fit the panel. So same thing over here. This one's even, it's hard to tell, but it's bent like down like this more, and it still isn't going to clear. Now I want to show you, I'm going to take this panel back off and I'm going to show you the back side of all three of these panels and just show you something I noticed while I was swapping them out. Okay, so this is really odd in my opinion. If you look at these tabs, flanges, brackets, whatever you want to call them, you can see that this one is well behind the edge here. So like even if I bent this up, you know, where it looks like it should be, I mean there's a, I don't know, the width of my finger, probably 1/2 to 5/8 of an inch. Same way with this one. Now this is the generic. This is the RDOT panel. This is the Dynacorn panel over here. And again, pretty good sized gap. And then this is the CJ panel. I'm going to just call it the CJ panel. And again, has a gap. All right. Now what's wrong with this picture? This one, the RDOT, it's like overlapping almost. Sticking out so far that it's, but look, almost the same thing with the Dynacorn panel. So why is that? But here, the CJ panel, it looks more correct. I don't understand that. Why would they make those brackets so far off? I mean, that's crazy. But it does show you that, you know, maybe these panels are made in the same place. Maybe that panel is made in the same place as that panel. I don't know. But they may all be made in the same place. I don't know. But it's just an observation. And the bracket design is a little different here. This one on the CJ is smooth, very flat. This one on Dynacorn has a lump in the middle. So does this one. Has a little lump in the middle. Very odd. But anyway, I know, I'm not going to be using these other two panels. These are just a comparison. But I'm going to have to remove those two brackets regardless, because I need to make this panel fit the car first and then worry about making the brackets do their job. So it's always something. So the plan is to get this bracket off, and what I want to do, I don't want to drill all the way through the panel, so I'm going to use, I don't know what size this bit is for sure, could be a little, like 3/16, and all I want to do is drill into the back of the weld. So let's see if I can pull this off while the camera's up in the way. Try not to block your view. That'll work. Yep. No damage. Just takes a little time. So I'll repeat that on the other piece. Now let's see how it fits. All right, it looks like I'm pretty close on the holes, like there shouldn't be any change to any of that, obviously. When I push up on this bottom corner right here, it hits a little bit of this doubler flange, or this seam flange. So I might have to trim back a little bit of that material just to help this get up tighter. And that's not a real big thing. I mean, whenever I've done these in the past, I've had to cut off a lot of material here because it actually would be a very big shape like that whenever you assemble these. And so to trim back some of that material, that's pretty minor. Over here, same thing. It's hitting that same area. But I will point out, if you look at the shape, this has more of a banana shape to it on this side. This has seems to have a lot more curve than this side. Maybe I'm just, it appears that way. I mean, it may change, a little bit of the angle as I move forward, but at this point I need to get this closer, so I'll trim some of that back. And I'm a little concerned that it'll actually be short on this side, and there's really only one way to change that, and that's to do some cutting. So I think primarily I'm going to work on getting this nice and snug, and maybe even reshaping this just a little bit to help it fit better. And then I may have to put a cut somewhere in here and move this over a little bit to make it fit the car right. But yep, it's all part of the process. as I was looking this over a little bit more, I think another option that I have to help this, maybe it'll fit better if I can move the panel slightly to the left, because you can see here the transition isn't quite right and it actually overlaps just a little bit. To do that, I'm just going to take and enlarge the holes. As you can see, I put some silver Sharpie on these. Enlarge the holes slightly so that I can move the panel. I think that might be the first step, and we'll see what that does. So as I said, what I want to do is oblong these holes a little bit, and there's a couple of ways that can be done. One, you could take basically a little step drill. They sell these at Harbor Freight. I think you get like 3 in a pack, different sizes, and you can see it's got different steps on it. So you could enlarge the hole that way. I don't know that I want to do that just yet. I do know that I want to make the hole bigger. Well, and with that, I also want to make sure that I'm making it bigger in the direction that I need. So in this case, I have that silver marking there. So the plan is I want to oblong that hole. And to do that, I'm going to use something called a rotary file. And some people call these a burr, but it's basically a rotating file that you put in a straight grinder, or you could use an angle grinder. But I want to take that and enlarge that hole. And it's going to be kind of hard to see, so I'm actually trying to film this on a different camera as well. So to do that, I'm going to put on some gloves, some hearing protection, and some safety glasses. You can see that hole is a little bit oblong, and I'll repeat that on the other holes that I already marked, and then we'll do a test fit. So after doing the test fit with what I hoped would be enough, making those holes slightly oblong, I came to the conclusion that that's not going to work. So I like to show things or ideas that I've come up with, or a change of plans, because if I don't show these things, you don't realize that there's other work involved. So with that said, what I did was I just used some clamps. Since I had these openings for the exhaust ports, I figured out that I could put clamps on there and adjust it to where I needed it. The end result was, and if you look at these little silver marks I put on the panel, that's where the correct hole is, or where the hole is pre-stamped, let's say. So you can see that they're off, which that's the way it is. You've got aftermarket pieces from different companies and different places, and that's just the way it is. So what I'm going to do, well, I have a couple things. I also marked here where I'm going to trim this down just a little bit. This side appears to be just a little bit wider in this area, and again, aftermarket this, aftermarket that, blah blah blah. I'm just going to trim that down so I have a little bit of clearance, and it's not going to cause any chafing on that location. By doing it this way, I have a better gap, more consistent, and I actually had taken and just used my hands and reformed this just a little bit, just kind of pulled this down a little bit to flatten out this shape just a little bit. And I'm still going to remove some material from in here, and I'll show you on this side. I've taken a the Sharpie and just marked some material that I'm going to remove, because you can see this one has to come up a lot more than the other one. But what I plan to do, obviously I can make a new hole there because there was no hole existing. I am going to sorry, I am going to just drill on top of that location. I already know where I can see the edge of the hole, and I'm just going to make a new hole same way here. And if I need to, I can, you know, weld up that edge a little bit, but I don't know that it's going to be absolutely necessary. This isn't like a structural piece. It's a trim, essentially a trim piece for the back of the car, just to finish it out. So that's the plan. I'll drill some holes and then I'll show you from there. I'm also going to trim off that material and we'll see how it looks. Alright, so I have a screw in every hole. Now granted, I did have to elongate some, like I was saying, and I will go back and I'm going to weld that up, any of the bigger holes, like this one here especially. Now the conflict with this one isn't the fact, well, it's pretty much the fact that the holes that were stamped into the original panel, or the Dynacorn panel, I think this one was just off, because if you look across, this one sits lower than the others. But it's either I work with this panel and modify it, or I drill another hole. I really didn't want to put another hole in the back of this car, so it's easy enough for me to just weld these little holes, these edges shut. Now this side again, I'm gonna have to, you know, trim that down. I haven't done that yet, and I will point out that, you know, this is gonna need a little bit of rework. Like, I'm gonna have to maybe try to change the angle of this flange a little bit, meaning I have to move it in or forward so that the whole assembly can rotate, because right now it's fighting that movement. See what I'm saying? So I'm not going to count on a bolt pinching this or holding this up tight. I need to manipulate the metal to try to you know, make it fit better to the car so that the hardware isn't doing all the work. And that's really just going to come down to, I'll probably put it on, take a piece of metal behind here, or a block or something, and just dolly this flange, you know, that way a little bit so that it can rotate. So let me get those holes taken care of and trim off this metal on the side, and we'll see how it looks. As I'm test fitting and doing adjustments, I wanted to show you something. I've already trimmed off some of the material down here, and I may need to take a little bit more just to make it fit comfortably. But I did a little adjustment, and I didn't show it because I wasn't sure if it would work, but I want to show you what I did. This corner here was kind of puckered up, let's say, or rolled up higher. So when I pushed this in, it was making a little bit of contact right there. Well, this is metal. You can manipulate metal. So what I did is I just took my little you know, body hammer, and I put it between the bottom of the quarter and that flange, and all I did is push on it just a little bit, and it reshaped that. And so now it's pretty close. I mean, really, it turned out really nice. And there's still some manipulation I'll need to do, but I just wanted to show you that before I got too far and forgot to show it. I did the same thing on the other side, and it looks even better. So just a little tip for you. Alright, so I've reattached it, obviously. I've got a screw in every hole, and after manipulating that flange just a little bit, and I may do a little bit more yet, I'm not sure, but look at this. Very little effort, and it fits up nice and snug. But here's the next dilemma. Remember these brackets? Look how thick that, or how long that section of the bracket is. With this, let me just show you this. I'll put this in place using what would be the welded portion that attaches to the valance panel. And I'm going to bottom it out against the back of the quarter. So now if I push this up, I don't know if you can see that very well, but I'll put my thumb behind it. That's how much material. I mean, it's like a good probably 1/2 inch here at the top, and maybe 3/4 down here at the bottom. So I'm gonna have to customize these brackets. Never fails, but you know, that's how it is. I don't know why they make them so long. I guess, you know, maybe with the original quarters they may have had a deeper recess or something like that. And you know what, I can actually do a comparison on that, because I have the 65 coupe that I call the Stray Pony, that I've done a little bit on that to show as a reference. Maybe I'll look at that and show you the drop difference. I can't see it being that huge, but I'll take a look at it and do a comparison, because that's a lot. So anyway, panel's fitting pretty good. I will have to do something with these. Alright, so this is the Stray Pony. I've mentioned before, I've done some comparisons on this using the quarter panels, which are original, and the extensions when I was working on the Brooklyn Pony car. So in looking at it, it has the rear valance in place. So I'll pull that off and get a look at it. Now I don't know if that's an original valance or if it's been replaced. I'm assuming it's been replaced, but I'll pull it apart and we'll take a look at that recess. Okay, with the panel off, you can see the finished area on these original quarters. Now I know these are original. This car has not been hit, nothing's been replaced as far as this kind of sheet metal. All the original spot welds are in place. And I want to point out something. Right here, if you look at this transition point from the outer skin, let's say, into this dropped area that connects to the inner structure here, the angle right here is actually more, I don't know, it's kind of hard to, it's more like this, whereas this piece is flat. I don't know if you can see that transition right there. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, but there's a transition point right here, and I don't know that any of the replacement quarters actually follow that. I haven't paid that much attention to it. Regardless, I'll just show you that this bracket that I have right here, which is for this side, if I were to put it up in place, it sits in like it should, but there's a difference in the distance from this pinch flange here, maybe 3/8 of an inch to the transition point, to the bend. So this does look like it's a little bit deeper in comparison to the other quarter, but I want to show you something else as well. This rear valance, if you look closely, all the holes are oblong all the way across. And again, I don't know if this is an original piece or not, but all the panels I have just have regular holes in them. I really doubt somebody went out of their way to make those holes by hand. I would venture those are punched that way. But if I compare the brackets, they're very similar as far as height and, you know, location. So it has to be probably most of the problem, maybe just the quarter panels. Regardless, I'm going to have to modify these brackets to make it work. Here's another thing. If you look, you see a lot of pitting. So this very well may be an original rear valance. Wouldn't surprise me at all. I know that this car is very solid and everything on the back is original, so wouldn't surprise me at all. You know, this is a good observational point that I want to share with you, because whenever you put these quarter panels on, this is already pre-shaped. And what I mean by that is the bottom it's already formed. You know, you're really not going to change very much in working on this. And what I notice is this angle here, as I mentioned on the other car, is this one's not as severe an angle, let's say. And then this lower section where the hole is should be up higher. But to do that, you'd almost have to cut, let me see if I can get some more light on this. You'd almost have to cut here and then cut down here and bend this up and then weld it in place. You know, whenever we put these quarters on, we tend to follow the shape because that's the way it's made, you know. And we don't think about these other little things that could come back to haunt us. Now, I don't know that even if I move this, you know, an eighth or even a quarter, if that would be enough to take care of the bracket. But this is just an observation on these quarter panels. You know, they're all stamped out wherever they're stamped out. And, you know, there's probably not the greatest in quality control. But that's an observation, so make note of that. Whenever you're working on these cars and you're going to put your quarters on, get a look at this section down here. You may have to try to be ahead of the curve, let's say, and reshape that so that you don't have to deal with maybe not deal so much with the bracket problems with the valance. Alright, so how do we resolve the bracket issue? I think I have an idea. And what I plan to do, I have one of these, you know, the little kits you buy. Here's the rear 6466 rear valance panel clip bolts with nuts. So there's a part number from Mustangs Unlimited, I believe. This is one that I had already had. And if you haven't dealt with these, basically the little bolt has a spring-loaded clip on it, and you put the rounded portion of the bolt into the round portion of the hole, and then the bolt has a square shape to it. So when you put these two together, that's what it does. It's supposed to hold that in place and lock it in. So my plan is I'm going to bolt this in place and then put the valance panel up against and get an idea, see if I can get a way to measure or mark where I need to cut. And what I'll do is, you know, with this obviously in the fixed location, I can't do anything more with this side of it. I can shorten up this piece until I get what I need. So that's the plan. Alright, so we already know that it's too tall, the bracket's too long. And just to throw some numbers out there, I'm not going to be very specific here because this could change, but let's just say right now I'm at 5/8 of an inch, right? And I want it to be 1/4 of an inch, just as an example. If that's the case, then I need to cut off 3/8 of an inch so that I can make that go up. That makes sense? Because otherwise, 1, 2, 3, yep, 1/4 inch would be the difference. I think maybe I found an easier way to do this. I used just a cut line, just general reference cut line. Really, I just used the edge of this pinch weld, and I cut off, the other half of the bracket. Well, it has these little flanges right here that kind of bend up whenever it's stamped, and I cut those off of the remainder piece. And by doing that, instead of it sitting, flush against as a weld, let's say, I can slide it in between those little bent flanges. So that's going to make it easier to get my final fitment whenever I set the panel up in place. And I have another little trick I want to show you. It may not be something that you can pull off, but you might. It's just something I do to try to make things go together easier. All right, so the valance panel is in place, and I want to show you this. These are some little high strength magnets. I don't know if they're rare earth or what. These things came from some industrial equipment, like they were used to hold desks, metal desks, to a metal floor so they wouldn't move around. And a friend of mine, he salvaged these for me, and I have to be careful when I put these on because they will pinch you. So you just know that. Now you may be able to use something else, another type of magnet. And the whole point of this is I can take, this little piece of metal that I cut off, and I can put it on the back side. I can line it up with the piece that I have remaining, and that gives me an idea of where it needs to go on this piece as well. So I want to show you something with that. I'm just going to try to line that up a little bit without getting too much of my head in the way. But so that'll hold that in place while I experiment. So this is the view from the back side of the valance, and here you can see the old witness mark of where the original bracket, where this bracket was welded on, and where it is now. So if I slide this up, and I know that's interacting with the other half right now, that shows you just how far off that bracket was, at least on the passenger side. So just to give you some point of reference. Now the nice part about this, I can get a welder up in here and easily tack that in place so that it's not going to move around later. But I need to get an idea as to how I'm going to weld those two halves together so that they fit properly. So like I was saying, I have that piece held in place with a magnet, and I can slip this up and get it where I want it, but I need this to stay up in place. So what I'm going to do is use one of my tripods, and I'm just going to elevate it up, get it in where I want it. That works. Now the tricky part is going to be actually welding that. One part of me wants to come in from this side and see if I can get the welding wire inside there, but I'm probably going to have to come from the other side and just try to get a couple tacks on it. Once I do that, I can take the magnet off, lower the valance back down, and that'll expose this side, which then I can fully weld. I think that'll work. Now, as I'm going through this thought process and trying to show you how to make this work, what I probably should have done was cut the bracket a little bit further away from that pinch weld, and then it would have been easier access on the back side to reach that, because it's almost flush with that pinch weld. And in hindsight, I could have, like I said, made that a little bit longer and done the same process that I'm doing now, but had a little bit more access to weld to. So I'm going to see if I can get my welder back behind there and just throw some tacks on there and see if that works. Okay, so that idea didn't work, but I have something that may just work, and hopefully I can get the angles right. It's kind of hard to do this with the camera, but the plan now is I can take a little screwdriver and I can reach up and press that extra piece, or that secondary piece, against the bolted in part. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll slide the magnet off. I know this sounds really crazy. I'm going to slide the magnet off while maintaining pressure right there. So at that point I could do a couple different things. One, I may just do this, I don't know yet. But I may just try to weld it. Just put a little tack weld on it while it's in place, because I have enough room, then I can get my stinger up in there. So I think this will work. So if I took this, and like I was saying, if I put this against the plate that's in place, well, right there, I could pull it off and it stays. I think that's going to work. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's going to work. Now if I can just do it with the camera. Nice. That's gonna work. That's the angle. All right, it's welded together. I know I didn't film it because I really couldn't have shown you anything, but once I take this apart, you'll see exactly what I did, and there's no real damage to the outside here. I welded it from the back side, and so now I'm done with or I say I'm done, there's probably a little bit more I'm going to do to this side, but the passenger side fits and it's bolted in. It's not going anywhere. So I have to take the bolt loose now from the nut off of the bolt from the inside, and then I'll work on the other side, the driver's side. One more thing that I'm probably going to do, just because I don't know, I'll have to look at it once I get it back on the ground with this in place. The transition here is really nice on the driver's side. This side is just a little bit off, and I'm debating on what I'm going to do with it. If you know me, you know what I normally do. I'm going to probably end up cutting a line right here and bring this over. It might be just 1/8 of an inch. Might not be much, but that way I can maintain this line and fill that gap, grind it smooth, and it's going to look like it truly belongs to this car. So let me get the other side done, and then I'll show you the progress. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing on the passenger side, and again I've taken and trimmed down what's left of that bracket, and it's going to slip inside of that little channel there because of those flanges. So I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to get it up in place, have this tight, against it, hold it with a screwdriver, and then weld that on. And then I'll show you how I'm going to weld this on. Now, it's pretty simple, but what I did is I enlarged the little holes that I had pre-drilled, or when I drilled out the spot welds. So I just stepped those up a little bit, and then once I get that all up in place and I'm happy with it, I'll go on the back side and weld it. So I'll try to show that. I might be able to do it, I don't know, but we'll give it a shot. Alright, so I have the little tab welded on to the other half of the bracket, and I wanted to show you just how much difference there is if you look at where these holes are versus where they originally were. That's how far off. This hole this is where the old spot weld was, and this hole, this is where the old spot weld was. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit, a little better perspective maybe. Original, new location, original, new location. So, yep, things you got to do. So I'm going to weld that on and see if I can't get it to stay in place and show you that. So now it's just held in place with the magnet. Kind of hard for me to do this with the camera right in front of my face. Now the magnet's out of the way, and what I'll do once I take this down, I'll put some more weld on there, but that's all I need to hold it in place until then. Alright, so both brackets are welded on, not going anywhere. And I also welded this seam on the back side where they overlapped. So that's good and solid. And of course the next thing, as I said before, I'll probably reshape the passenger side. So if you look at this, you can see the transition or the gap, let's say, from the edge of the bracket to the edge of the panel. And if you look at this side, this one's closer. So I know I'm going to already move this out just a little bit to make it fit the car better, but I'm going to get this bolted back on and show you that. Alright, so as you see, the valance panel is back in place, and like I said, I don't like that this is a little fat right here. I mean, in other words, I want this gap to be skinnier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a cut. And I'm going to try to stay fairly close to this edge, maybe a 1/4 inch, something like that. And then once I make that cut, I'll move this piece over just a little bit and then re-weld that back together. So I don't want to just have a random cut, even though it's not going to matter, because as long as you're following, you're cutting, you're not like cutting 3 times and then have to figure it out. I'm just going to cut once and then move it. So just as a point of reference, I'm just going to put a piece of tape right there, and that way I have just something to guide my eye when I'm making the cut. So let me get my 4.5 inch grinder with the fibrous wheel and cut this off. I'm going to reposition that tape just a little bit. I do want it to get a little wider at the bottom. I think I want to bring this in just a little bit. Here's why I say that. Whenever I separate this and I bring this out just a little bit, it pushes this top corner out just a little bit too much. So by trimming this down a little bit, I can control that angle and get it exactly where I want it. Now I may have to make a filler strip as I look at this even more, to get the shape that I want as an end result. I can't do all that with weld, so I'm going to making a little filler, I think. And this is where those magnets I have will come in real handy. Now I want to show you this because if you were looking closely, I wasn't just pushing that cutting wheel straight in, because this flange is on the inside. I didn't want to cut that off. So that's why I was taking my time to make that cut. Let me get my magnets and I'll set this up in place and we'll have a look at it. Yeah, what I'll have to do is get something to kind of get between those two, because this just wouldn't pull this. Maybe I can get it to stay. But you get the idea. That's going to allow that edge to be closer to the quarter, and I can control that gap. It may be just more like that when I'm done, but I'll get something in between there, and then I'll tack it up here so that it's where I want it. Maybe put another little tack somewhere in here to keep it from moving around, and then I'll make my filler piece. Okay, so I got a little bit creative. I have the magnets holding it, keeping the shape the way I want it. I used a drill bit to get the width that I wanted so that it lined up the edge properly with the quarter. And then this is just a paint stick put in there to keep it from pulling away whenever I start tacking. So I'm going to, put a tack up here at the top, and like I said, put one here in the middle somewhere, and then, I'll make a filler piece later. But at the moment, I just want it to stay right where it's at. So get a little tack on there. And I know that'll hold it in place. So now I just need to make the filler and get that in there. Now I've shown this tool before. This is a throatless shear that I have from Harbor Freight. And it's really handy if you're just doing small patchwork stuff. So in the case of what I'm trying to accomplish here, I only need about 5.5 inches of material, and it starts off at a 1/4 inch. Starts off at a 1/4 inch wide and narrows down. And this is just a rough line. I'm just trying to get it close, and then I'll shape the rest of it with my sander. But I'll just show you how nice it is to have this throatless shear. Basically, I'm just going to come close to following that line, but I want to cut this, and by using the shear, I can trim off exactly or relatively close to the dimension that I need. And this is going to be a little bit oversized, like I said, but that's okay. Now, as you can see, it rolls up the material, but this steel, just about any of this steel now, is very flexible. So I can take a hammer if I want to and just kind of tap this out on the steel plate that I have for the vise, and just get it, in the shape that I want. But that's all it takes, just a nice little cut, and I have my patch material. I just need to, do a final trim to fit. So really, without doing anything to this other than reshaping it with my hand, this is almost exactly what I need. I can trim it just a little bit, and that'll take care of the filler that I need. So, alright, so I'm going to get the piece started, and then I'll do some fine tuning along the way, but I think this is going to work out just fine. Alright, I'm not going to bore you with repeated weld, grind, but I'll show you the end result when I get there. Basically, that's all I'm going to do is continue to fill in the gaps, smooth it out. So, there it is. All ground, filled. Might take just a little bit of filler to do the final shaping, but as I like to say, I'm happy with that. So I think this looks pretty good. The other side, it fits very well, and yeah, I like it. Alright, so that's going to be the end of this video. I hope you found this information useful. I know that I was surprised to see that the brackets on the valance panels, all three of them, basically had the same offset. I don't know why that is. You would think there's some sort of tooling that should define, where those go exactly. But they all three had a similar issue. Of course, I had the basic R. Taiwan, the Dynacorn version, and then the CJ Classic that I ended up going with. Took a little extra work, modifying those brackets so that it tucked up nice, adding some material on this side, but that's, again, as I've shown in all my videos, that seems to be the norm anymore. We can't just have something that bolts right on. We have to do something to make it look right. And, well, I'm just going to keep on showing you how I approach these problems and what I do to solve them, at least in my opinion. So there may be other ways, but this is how I do it. Again, this will be whatever video this is in a series. I think it's 36 or whatever. There will be more videos coming, and I'm working on different ideas and what direction the project is going. There's some things that I need to address, little things, and I'm not filming all of that. There's just little things that I'm trying to take care of before I get to a certain point, and it's just not feasible or practical to film those little things. So anyway, I'm going to keep on doing some of that stuff to get the car further along in the process. If you like the video, by all means, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, I ask that you do subscribe and share the video and that sort of thing. I will point out that I do have links down below in the description for my Amazon page. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon or a patron for the Patreon account, there will be a link down there for that as well. Every little bit helps. I'm trying to get this channel as big as I can so that maybe I can retire from my regular job and make this a more full-time gig. So anyway, I have one more thing that I want to comment on in just a minute. When I did my giveaway last month, whatever it was, for the 30,000 subscribers, and I had given numbers to everybody who had made a comment on the giveaway video, and normally that all works out fine, but I had some issue with that. Not that it really changed anything, but what happens is sometimes YouTube will flag a comment and it doesn't show up in the sequence that it really was there. So like I might have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I give numbers to those people 1 through 5, and then there will be, I'll go through 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever, and then I go check on, or I get a notification that there's been a comment that was flagged. Why it was flagged, I don't know. It's just a normal, everyday comment. So I go click on that and I allow it into the comment section, make it approved. Well, now it shows up, or showed up, it's had a few of these to happen, between the 5 and the 6. Well, I'm not going to go back and adjust all of those numbers, to make it make sense. So that's just the way it is. It doesn't appear back at the top like a normal comment. It gets sandwiched back into where it was actually made. So what I have done, and whenever I had those comments come up, I would go back and kind of retro post a number. So in this case, the number that I had posted for the winner of the flag, his number, I think technically it showed up again out of sequence. He was number 88. But he ended up with a different number. It was like actually 171 or something like that. So I went back and I looked through all those numbers and I verified where it was. And sure enough, he was actually number 88, but I never gave him that number. I know, it's kind of confusing. Trust me, this guy won. So the flag, I've given away the other prizes for that video. Leonard Gilbreth got one of them. Greg Workshop, he got one of them, and he's in Australia. Let me tell you, that was deal to ship that little Hot Wheels car to Australia. And then Ricard Spoor, he's in Sweden. Again, kind of a big deal to ship that, but I did. You know, that was my agreement. And then Christopher Gibson, the guy who won or should have won the flag, which I still have. I'm waiting to hear from him. I've commented twice on the original video asking him if he had sent me an email. He hasn't. All right. This is going to be, I guess, the final. I don't know how else to deal with it. This will be the final call for him. Arden Frey Jr. That's, you know, he's supposed to get the flag. Arden, if you're watching these videos and you hear your name being announced right now, send me an email, joedaddysgarage@gmail.com. Let me know that you're the flag winner, and I will get it sent to you, I promise. But, you know, sometimes technology is not as good as it seems, and you end up with these issues. But anyway, it will get sent. And other than that, things are going good. Channel's doing good. I'm glad everybody was chiming in on the SEMA videos. That was a blast. I'm so happy I went, and looking forward to doing it again next year. And other than that, things are good. My grandson's getting bigger, and he's starting to get more, you know, fun to play with. And so eventually I'll put some video out there with him, whether you like it or not, that's up to you. But I'm pretty proud to be a grandparent and have this little grandson. So anyway, whatever. So that's it for now, and stay tuned. There'll be more videos coming. I've had some requests to do some tool videos, so I may go do some of that just to kind of fill in some spaces, and we'll see. Let me know if you are interested in any particular tools. I will say that I may have picked up a Vulcan 165 TIG from Harbor Freight when it was on sale. May have. Anyway, so I'm going to try to do something with that as well. But that's it. And until next time, take care of yourselves. Thanks for watching. Hey gang. No. Hey gang. Welcome back to another blah 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 blah.